And again, folks, this was quite the detailed, nuanced ruling. However, she didn't rule to remove him from the ballot because she said she wasn't sure that Section 3 of the 14th Amendment applied to presidents or vice presidents, and that she wasn't certain that they were officers of the United States. The wording in Section 3 of the 14th Amendment says, quote, "No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president and vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state, who having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States to support the Constitution of the United States shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against same, or given aid and comfort for the enemies thereof." This judge also fell for the defense's, in my mind, stupid, ridiculous assertion that the oath referred to in the 14th Amendment is different from the one the president takes. We talked about this a few weeks ago. The 14th Amendment says to support the Constitution. The presidential oath says to defend it. To me, that is a difference without a distinction. And of course, many reputable and credible legal analysts disputed this decision. And if I may pat myself on the back here and profusely for a moment, not one of them mentioned this gem I found on page 38. Listen to what the judge wrote, quote, "Federal agencies that Trump oversaw as the chief executive officer of the executive branch, including the Secret Service, identified significant threats of violence ahead of January 6, 2021, including threats to storm the U.S. Capitol and kill elected officials." Right there in her 102-page ruling on page 38, she calls Trump an officer of the United States, in particular, the chief executive officer of the executive branch. And no, I'm not finished patting myself on the back for uncovering that gem. Now let's go to page 47. The judge wrote, quote, "Shortly after 1 p.m., Vice President Pence released a letter asserting that his role as presiding officer is largely ceremonial and dismissed the arguments that he could take unilateral action to overturn the election or return the Electoral College votes to the states as contrary to his oath to the Constitution." There, right there, she just called Mike Pence an officer of the United States. And yet on page 95, she wrote, quote, "For Section 3 of the 14th Amendment to apply to Trump, this court must find both that the presidency is an office under the United States and that Trump took an oath as an officer of the United States to support the Constitution of the United States," end quote. And hello, it's right there. And then on page 96, she wrote, quote, "To lump the presidency in with any other civil or military office is odd indeed and very troubling to the court because, as interveners point out, Section 3 explicitly lists all federal elected positions except the president and vice president. Under traditional rules of statutory construction, when a list includes specific positions but then fails to include others, courts assume the exclusion was intentional," end quote. Or perhaps the founders never envisioned someone who had engaged in insurrection, and a former president at that, would have the unadulterated gall to run again. And B, that the American people would be stupid enough to even consider re-electing this insurrectionist and traitor. But then again, the founders could never have envisioned today's gargantuan conservative corporate-controlled right-wing propaganda hate media industrial complex, and B, that again, a sizable portion of the American populace being stupid enough to not realize this complex as nothing but a propaganda machine for the right. But yeah, they left out president and vice president to exclude them seeking for office, even though they may have engaged in insurrection. Does that make any sense? It's not okay for everybody else, but it's okay for a president and vice president. Makes no sense whatsoever. And again, she wrote that after she referred to both Trump and Pence as officers. I mean, let's simplify it even more. How do we refer to the presidency? Answer, as the office of the president, which I would think would qualify anyone running for that office as an officer of that office. Yes? I think the proper legal term for this decision is, quote, a cowardly cave. And yet another attempt to tiptoe on eggshells around someone this very judge called an insurrectionist. But the reason for any aforementioned backpatting is I have always prided myself on being able to find things no one else does. I have not seen one legal analyst yet mention what I just read to you today. Not one. But I guess this is what you can discover when you have no social life and actually take the time to read a judge's 102-page ruling.